Pakistan would like to align itself with the statement delivered by the distinguished permanent representative of Italy on behalf of the Uniting for Consensus group. Let me start by thanking you, Ambassador and Chair, for convening this 6th meeting of the IGN and for circulating the revised co-chairs elements paper. We would like to greatly acknowledge your splendid stewardship of the work of the IGN during the 79th session of the General Assembly. During the course of the year, we have engaged in constructive and frank discussions on both the areas of convergence and divergence. I would like to underscore that the elements paper reflects the Chair's understanding of the convergences and divergences among member states on the issue of Security Council reform and may serve as a working reference to identify further convergences and common ground while maintaining the official positions of various groups and states. We believe that if adequate time had been provided to reflect on this paper, a more informed discussion could have taken place. I would like to make the following observations in my national capacity. 1. On the introductory part of the elements paper, which refers to the pact for the future, we are of the view that a correct interpretation of the pact should have been reflected. The suggested tone from the referred document should not be interpreted or converted to some language or a proposed line of action as some definitive course of future approach that does not correspond to the pact for the future. And this brings me to the next point. We strongly feel that the formulation related to the consolidated model in the introductory part has not been reflected in the true spirit of the pact for the future. The language that consolidated model is now a clear objective for the IGN is somewhat prescriptive, which is contrary to the spirit of the pact. Clearly, the pact clearly states that a consolidated model must be developed based on convergences among the 5 clusters and models presented by the member states. Let me recall that IGN is the only platform for discussions and negotiations on Security Council reform. The mandate for the IGN has been given by the General Assembly itself. And in this regard, 2 documents form the bedrock of our process. That is, Resolution 5330 and Decision 62/557. Our process should be tightly anchored on these documents. We therefore propose that necessary changes be made in the paper. Thirdly, we believe that paragraph 7 of the elements paper on the review clause needs rewording to reflect a balanced manifestation of the discussions. In its current shape, it incorrectly states that the member states support the inclusion of a review clause in the reform of the Security Council. We would like to point out that some delegations expressed that they do not favor any approach that would entail a review clause as a vehicle to the benefit of some individual member states or that would lead to a piecemeal reform. Fourthly, a correction is required in the paragraph 18 related to the presence of new members in the Council. It is important to recall that the criteria provided for in Article 23.1 of the United Nations Charter refer only to non-permanent members. We would therefore propose adding the qualifier elected after the words new to avoid any misunderstanding. Fifth, under the divergences in section 1 of the paper, we would like to highlight that besides the UFC, the African and the Arab groups, which you have mentioned in your paper, there are several other individual member states, including some permanent members, who have advocated that a prior agreement should be reached on the principles of the reform before proceeding to text-based negotiations. Any precipitate move to the so-called text-based negotiations will be detrimental to the progress we have made in expanding the areas of convergence. Sixth, on the categories of membership, we strongly suggest modification of the language that says a significant number of delegations argue that the enlargement should include expansion in both the permanent and non-permanent seats. This is based on faulty arithmetic and logic, as many states have yet to express their positions, and some countries that have expressed their views belong to more than one group, thus making it inappropriate to use the word significant. Besides, different variations or characteristics of permanent seats are being advanced that do not reflect common position or same understanding. They cannot obviously be lumped together. Seventh, we acknowledge that there has been overall agreement on the need for equitable representation of certain cross-regional groups. However, while listing them in the elements paper, a footnote has been added stating that OIC is a faith-based organization. Let me clarify that OIC is the second largest organization after the United Nations, which has called for its due intergovernmental representation in a reformed Security Council. We note that the Pact for the Future, while mentioning the issue of representation of cross-regional groups, does not label any organization as faith-based. Last, we need to accurately reflect the differences in approach about the permanent seats between countries which seek the seats for themselves and the African desire for adequate representation, which is a demand on behalf of the entire continent endorsed by the African Union. We view the African desire for 2 permanent seats on the Council as being distinct from the claims of 4 members to individual permanent seats for themselves in their national capacity without reference to or agreement within their respective regions. We see the proposal of the African group as the claim of a region to have the final word on its own destiny. There are nuances and distinctions between positions that must be taken into account. Mr. Chair, whereas for decades the vast majority of UN member states have held the considered view that the paralysis and inaction in the Council and the issues surrounding transparency and democratic decision-making in the Council are due to the permanent members who, being unaccountable to the general membership, always keep their individual interests in the forefront. Now that we can address these problems by adding more such individual permanent members defies logic. No doubt, such demand has proved to be the major stumbling block for an early reform of the Security Council. In conclusion, Mr. Chair, we once again commend your work. We hope that due consideration will be given to our suggestions to have the elements paper accurately reflect the state of play. IGN is the sole format in which we should promote the discussions on Security Council reform. We should do our best to promote early agreement, but there is no artificial deadline or time limit to reach a consensus on reform. A conclusion depends on when we can get an agreement on a proposal which enjoys the widest possible political agreement of member states. I thank you.